I was able to turn out 25% of the vote. 25% of the people in my very rural space voted for someone who talked about abortion, LGBT rights, the fact that college should be free and preschool should be free and everyone should have health care. But those people turned out to vote for me, and then they also went all the way to the top of the ticket.
Welcome to Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line, where we throw bags at the state's biggest stories. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. It's Wednesday, and I'm joined today by Starting Line's community editor, Amie Rivers. The more things change, the more we're still going after LGBTQ Iowans. This week, we dig into a bill that would make a felony of bringing a youth to a drag show. And then we dig into a problem of transparency that's emerging around the state's private school voucher program. Apparently, the auditor can ask about anything so long as it's not that. And we talk about right-wing Republicans coming for the crown. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. So, Amie.
So, Zachary.
I have a hot take for you that I wanted to see if you were on the right or wrong side of.
Okay.
I love mustard on a sandwich.
Yellow mustard?
All kinds of mustard. Depends on my mood. It's sort of like my mood ring. See what kind of mustard I'm bringing out of the refrigerator. That's just how I'm feeling that day.
So you like the brown mustards as well?
Oh, the the Dijon, the Bourbon. Oh, we're a multi. I believe in a truly multi-colored. I was about to say multiracial mustard world. God, man, the Obama years really fucked me up, didn't they?
You're already starting strong.
Starting so strong. But I believe there is a right and a wrong application for sauces on a sandwich. Primarily, I believe that if you put sauce on both sides of the sandwich, you are effectively wasting one whole dimension of sauce.
How so?
Your taste buds are only on one side of your mouth. This is true. Like, we know this to be true. Okay. And I've heard people argue that, most of the taste happens in the nose, but that's bullshit. And we all know it. We never believe that science fiction bullshit. Anyway, I believe that if you are putting sauce on both slices of bread, you're wasting precious sauce. That you'd be better served just to double up on sauce on one side. Because you ain't going to taste the sauce that gets to the other side. There's a bunch of stuff in the sandwich that's going to separate that from your taste buds.
I mean, I don't think that's true at all. I will say to you this: if you put too much sauce, it'll leak out the sides, and you'll get less sauce. So if you want double the sauce, you kind of have to. I like a ton of mustard on
How much? I want to match your freak, absolutely, but I gotta know how much mustard am I agreeing to?
Well, I'm only a yellow mustard fan. I can't get down with the browns. So I'm sorry.
Like French's?
Yeah,
French's fucks.
Yeah, French's does.
But you're saying why are you putting French's on both sides of your bread?
So you get more of it. Yeah.
Why not just put it on one side of the bread where you can actually taste it? What? It's not going to leak out. What kind? Are you using paper bread? What are you binding your sandwiches and Post-it notes? What are you working with here?
Well, if you put too much on, it's just going to naturally be compressed by everything and come out the side. That's just physics.
Sounds like you just need to sponge your bread. What about some milk bread? What about some yellow bunny bread?
Milk bread. Oh, dang. Okay. Getting into bake-off territory here.
Dog, I'm just here to tell you that if you're making a sandwich and you got that mustard on both sides of the bread, in the long run, you're only hurting yourself and your budget. Times are hard. Amie, look at me. Times are hard. Mm-hmm. And if you're putting mustard on both character. If you're putting mustard on both sides, you should be ashamed. Support our troops. Put mustard on one side, save the rest. For the boys in fighting Hitler.
Mustard America great again. Dang, really?
First story this week, a House subcommittee pushed forward a bill criminalizing people who bring minors to drag shows. The bill was introduced by Republican Representative Skylar Wheeler of Hull. He said these shows are inappropriate for people under the age of 18. People like Wheeler have argued that these are being used to groom or sexualize children. But many have pointed out that it's just the newest front of a moral panic surrounding LGBTQ Iowans and their future in the state. Amie Rivers, we've been kind of in this territory for a while. This isn't the first time we've heard that drag shows have entered the mouths of our elected representatives.
Out of the mouths of babes. Right. Yeah, they're just, trying to eat away at all the edges of anything that could present itself as gay, non-straight, basically, in this arena. So they've been doing this for at least the last 7 or 8 years or so.
To begin, let's start with what we know about this bill that came. We're talking on Tuesday afternoon, about 30 minutes ago. The subcommittee passed the bill on to committee. So I think it's important to kind of understand how it works. One, it creates a Class D felony for anyone who knowingly brings a minor to a drag show at a place of business. It also gives the same felony charge to businesses that have minors that attend drag shows in their establishment. So that could be for the owner, manager, or the person who exercises direct control over the place of business, right? So two kinds of potential felonies under this law: a $10,000 fine for the business found in violation of the bill. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the definition that the bill uses for drag show. So I'm reading here from the bill's language. Drag show means a performance in which all the following apply. A, the main aspect of the performance is a performer who exhibits a gender identity that is different than the performer's gender assigned at birth through the use of clothing, makeup, accessories, or other gender signifiers. B, the performer sings, lip syncs, dances, reads, or otherwise performs before an audience for entertainment, whether or not performed for payment. I thought this was super interesting for a number of reasons, but just from a language standpoint, I love seeing gender signifiers in the text of this bill, right?
Yeah, it's hilarious if it wouldn't be so ridiculously stupid. For
totally.
Sure. Language like this would also ban Shakespeare. Let's be honest. When Shakespeare's plays were around, men were playing all of the roles in women's clothing when they needed to. So literally, if you're looking at this language alone, it bans Shakespeare. Republicans want to ban Shakespeare.
Yeah, gender swapped roles, which is really common in a lot of contemporary productions.
What about if I'm wearing pants and doing karaoke, Zachary?
I want to have you arrested on site. Even though this doesn't go after the performers, I would support legislation that arrests Amie Rivers everywhere. all of the Amie Rivers.
Really. What is a gender signifier? Because if we're looking at things that make a man, a woman, this hasn't been defined. So you're asking people to basically it's so obviously it's unconstitutional. It's going to go to court. Bars are already saying we're not gonna. The Blazing Saddle came out and was like, "F this," right? We're not gonna, we're gonna stand up for our performers. This stretches so far back. It's a foundational part of queer culture is the drag show. And so they're really coming after foundational parts of queer culture in order to erase it in this state and in other red states.
And I think it is interesting that we kind of get at the anti drag story time conversation by way of this one line about anytime a performer reads before an audience for entertainment. Right, that Skylar Wheeler, Representative Skylar Wheeler will talk about how this is sexualized content, this is it's inappropriate, et cetera, when we're talking about people reading books to children. Maybe I wouldn't pretend to know kind of how many hours Mr. Wheeler spends reading books to his children, but I will say that this is a net good, right? We actually want. I know parents. Parents want opportunities for their kids, for someone to entertain their kids, to take their kids to socialize their kids.
Right.
I think it's interesting, right, that we're just kind of going after what is a low-hanging fruit, what is something that helps the economy, something that harms no one.
Right. Yeah, you're not solving any problems. You're basically just taking whatever a Moms for Liberty talking point is and forcing it upon the rest of the state who are not asking for this. They're asking for other things, Zachary. I'm sure you know. Clean water would be one of those.
No, I haven't. What is water? Sorry, what is that? I've only heard about drag queens taking over our government.
Yeah, no.
Corrupting our kids.
Please ignore the cancer rate behind door number 2.
Cancer, I don't know her.
I don't know her.
Who is she?
Distraction. That's all this is. Distraction, outrage. And it's really just like on the backs of the most marginalized people that you can imagine. Like drag performers, children, like it's not hurting anything.
And nonetheless, this bill passed out of subcommittee today. We'll go to committee tomorrow. And I think it would be worth looking up just for a second kind of examples of Class D felonies. Yeah, so a Class D felony is a serious crime that's less severe than, say, a Class A, B, or C felony.
Mm-hmm.
Some examples include some petty drug offenses, some felonious drug offenses based on the amounts of the substance found, theft, fraud, assault, forgery, arson, even stalking. Right, all carry under certain circumstances potential for Class D felony status on conviction.
It's like classifying marijuana like heroin.
Yeah, I mean, it's by making it again I think the conversation folks want us to have is like why a felony and not a misdemeanor, but
right.
when really the misdemeanor would be too much for what we're talking about is like what entertainment is allowed, right? And if we're drag story hour at your public library.
Oh yeah, if the idea is to impose Christian nationalism on us, then what you want to do is draconianly punish anything that goes against that, which would absolutely be anything that is positive in queer culture.
Right. Right. Exactly. Second story, Iowa State Auditor Rob Sand said he has concerns about the $104 million school voucher program. According to an annual audit released this week, multiple state agencies refused to provide documentation about the program's basic financial controls.
This office has never been refused the ability to examine a program, right? And again, I go back to our professional staff, right? They're the ones whose license is on the line to do their job the right way. When they determine what they're reviewing, one of the things that they're looking for is materiality, right? So it's got to be material, meaning a big enough amount of money that you have to review it for the ACFR, right? And this is on that line of materiality. But then the other piece that the standards tell you that you want to look at is you want to look at new programs. Why? Because they're just getting set up. And as you're just getting set up, you're going to have kinks in the program. You're going to have pieces of it that you need to get ironed out, some wrinkles in there. And so you want to look more closely at new programs to make sure that as they are getting set up, that everything is functioning as it's supposed to.
Amie, have you been paying attention? Did you check out our coverage of this story?
Absolutely. I read every single one of your stories on iowastartingline.com.
You don't have to lie. It's fine.
I do. You're a very good writer.
You're so
Actually,
sweet.
Great journalist. We're glad to have you.
We have the best staff.
We have the best staff. Yes. Yes.
Amie, tell me, what's been your reception of this move by Sand?
It's picking on the only Democrat in this statewide electoral office. I mean, they just keep doing it. Reynolds even admitted to that, right? When she went to the U.S. Congress for the House Oversight Committee meeting, and they asked her straight up, was this bill specifically to take power away from Sand? And she was forced to be like, yeah. Like,
sure was.
The idea is that, like, she's actually trying to start a statewide DOJ, right? Which ostensibly should be looking at waste, fraud, and abuse. Yet you've already got a guy whose main job is to look at waste, fraud, and abuse and has the stats to back up that he's done a pretty good job of that. Like, he's uncovered a lot of abuse, both at the state level and at other local levels, and has recovered a lot of money from the state. And so, like, to keep hamstringing him just to, shut him out and make his job harder because you want to score political points, that's what it reads like to me.
Yeah.
Is that what it read like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Like, let's start from the beginning, right? So, 2 years ago, the state enacts its private school voucher program. The idea was that we would take state funds that would be used that families could use to pay for things like tuition expenses that come up as they are trying to educate their students outside of the public schools, inside, say a Catholic school, or say a Jewish school, right? The idea being that these are non-governmental places where taxpayer funds are following the child to. And what's interesting is the first 2 years, there were income qualifications, right? So not everyone was eligible to get a private school voucher. What they needed to be able to prove was that they fell within certain income qualifications, right? So this week, the auditor published this kind of partial audit of the program, saying that I got a lot of state agencies that are stonewalling me for information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, for my interests, it's this income verification piece. During the first 2 years, the contractor who manages the voucher program, Odyssey, is supposed to be verifying for each of these families, like, yes, they fall within our income qualifications for, to receive a voucher. When the auditor's office asked for documentation of how their process for doing so, they declined to offer documentation of that process, right? And they say, "Oh no, we're doing it, right? If you just check out." If you just, well, we won't share those documents with you. We're taking care of it. We've got it. You take our word for it. He also had found in the report, he gets into his issues with, his some concern based on the limited documents provided during their annual audit. He's got some privacy concerns, right? The extent to which the people participating in this program, right, that their data is protected. What are their processes for protecting that data? And then there's this more general issue with transparency, right? This program is going to grow to over $300,000, right? This is within the first 4 years. They will have spent $1 billion. It's estimated for this emergent program, for a program that did not exist just 2 years ago, right? That's pretty extraordinary growth. There's never been a program like this, and obviously there's some concern about kind of the extent to which we are adequately protected as a public, the extent to which we are, if we care about how taxpayer funds are spent, right? If we want accountability, if we want to make sure it's done in a transparent way. When the state auditor, the person vested with that responsibility to keep state government transparent, when he can't get access to this documentation, that raises some red flags for me.
Absolutely. I mean, we have no idea where this money is going. The company itself is not giving us those information. And that's always the danger with this third-party company. When you privatize things, you now no longer have a say as John Q. Public to those documents. And it was supposed to be that the auditor could have at least looked at those documents if they so wanted to.
Right.
And now they don't have to listen to the auditor because we have passed a bill saying you don't have to listen to the auditor. So it's really a shame for the Iowan taxpayer.
Totally. And I do want to say that as part of these audits, the kind of way that they work is that the state auditor works with the state agency. They say, they ask for a bunch of information. Auditor's office reviews that information. That office develops a list of findings right from its audit of that program, and then it gives state agencies the ability to respond, right? And so we do have a response from the Department of Education, and they who kind of helps oversee some of this program. And they said that Auditor Rob Sands being a bully, right? He's biased against this program. He doesn't believe that it's he said many times that he does not support a private school voucher program, and therefore he's ethically damaged, right? That he can't review this program in an unbiased method. which is probably true, right? Like, it is true that Sand has been very upfront about that he doesn't support the continued growth, the quick growth of this program. But I'll also point out that, like, isn't that exactly who you want checking the books? Is someone who, like, doesn't trust it from the jump? Like, isn't that, I don't know, like, if do we only want yes men checking the books for state government, or do we want people
Yes.
looking for graft?
It's pretty clear that Reynolds only wants yes men.
The second, yeah, and the second piece that they brought up was that, oh, well, actually, we will give you these, access to this information. You just have to go through this other kind of bureaucratic process for getting that approval. And I asked about it. It was like they said you have to send an engagement letter. I asked Sand kind of like, what's the difference here between the annual report that he used and this engagement letter. And his point was that the annual reports are we do this for large pots of money, large programs across state government. The idea that they would after the auditor's office asks for a document that they would refuse is a red flag, right? And it is something that his office of investigators, of inspectors, right, or CPAs are cognizant of and are looking out for. He pointed out that many of the he didn't fire and rehire his office when he came in. Many of the people working under many of the people working underneath him are worked under previous auditors. That's Republican and Democrat auditors, right? This isn't like a partisan hack office, despite what the kind of valence of the state agency's responses are. This is people taking seriously what is a tremendous program that's only growing larger with each year.
I don't think that necessarily making sure that you have like a balanced political office is the end all be all. I think you have to just have qualified people who can read numbers and do the numbers with you. I think that's also why I don't buy the argument that because he said that he doesn't support vouchers in the past, that he's unqualified to report on them. That'd be like barring us from reporting on the Iowa Capitol because we've run mean things about Governor Reynolds. The whole
which
idea,
we'll continue to do, to be clear.
Which we'll continue to do. The whole idea, though, is that you can tell where our sources are. You can go look up those sources yourself. I think that's also what the auditor is doing, is looking up documents that they get that anybody can then access, and they can do the numbers for themselves, and nobody has access to that.
Well, and just to make the point, there are parts of a auditor's investigation that we don't get to review, right? That they're proprietary. There's proprietary information. There's private information. There's all sorts of stuff that like isn't subject to public records disclosure.
Yeah,
but that's why you want an independent agency within the executive branch that is checking books and is making sure that when we say that dollars are flowing into the pocket of this private school, that would actually ended up there, right? And that we have a way of checking in on that.
And if you let the auditor, who's not a part of your party, do that, and the auditor finds out that everything's okay, I think more people will believe that versus once you've frozen him out and he doesn't get reelected, and then you put in your own lackey to do the books, maybe half of the state doesn't believe you anymore because now you're just setting your yes men in there to do it. So I think that there's actually an argument for transparency there, like you're saying.
And this is thinking in the sort of like longer, taking the longer view of this. Reynolds has been clear in the past that what she wants is one of her people running the auditor's office. That's why she has been so kind of antagonistic with the state auditor's office. It's the reason why the stonewalling is happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's why she encouraged the bill that limited the auditor's authority back, 3 years ago, looking at, once upon a time when the auditor couldn't get a document, he could go over to a court and to an independent judge and say, hey, I think for these reasons, I think that we should have access to this in order to, check into this account, check into this program, check into this person. Right. And the judge would say, oh, yep, 100%, or no, right? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And, based on that, he could subpoena for this information that an agency, a county government or whatever is refusing to offer up. Now he's got to go to now when there's a dispute between an agency and the auditor's office, there's a board of three that are created. There's the one person appointed by the auditor, one person appointed by the state agency who was likely appointed by the Iowa governor, and then a third that is, of course, appointed by the state governor.
Yeah, it's 2-to-1 Reynolds.
The math doesn't math, does it?
Right. Yeah.
So it's just all part of this like kind of larger scheme that is leading to less transparency for what is a very important and large program.
Yeah. It's just solidifying power, I think, in Reynolds' hands.
Yeah.
You know, and we're sort of like, don't let it happen.
Speaking of Reynolds, third story during a press conference Tuesday, Governor Kim Reynolds let slip that she was quote running on rural health care. When asked if that meant she was running for re-election, she demurred and said that there was news to come. The marquee race for Iowa's governor hasn't begun yet, but it is shaping up to be the most expensive race in Iowa's history. While Reynolds plays Will I, Won't I, former Republican State Representative Brad Sherman says he's all in for primarying Reynolds. Sherman is a conservative pastor from Williamsburg and is hoping to convince primary voters that Reynolds isn't conservative enough. Amie, what have we seen from Sherman in the past?
I was looking up some of our old articles. Looks like in 2022, I wrote about how he was one of, I believe, 6 who were running for the state legislature and had been election deniers. So he's from Williamsburg. It was the chair of the Iowa County Republicans. He's a pastor who founded Informed Choices, which is a chain of clinics that dissuade women from seeking abortions. He was also the winner of a 6-way primary in that district for the House.
Fascinating.
And he posted before his election, I will say it straight out. This is a quote. I will say it straight out. The outcome of the November 3rd, 2020 general election was the result of massive fraud and cheating. These things need to be addressed in Iowa.
There was no evidence found of widespread voter fraud in the United States, in Iowa. Republicans and Democrats have said this multiple times, but here we are. They didn't win, and so they called foul.
And also, I didn't hear anything about this election. If there's massive fraud and cheating, why didn't we talk about it this election at all? That's
weird.
so weird.
Weird. Amie, tell me, he has some history with the anti-LGBTQ movement, right?
He was one of a couple super extreme right-wing Republicans who in 2023 sponsored a bill that went nowhere to straight out ban gay marriage in the state, which we won the right to same-sex marriage in 2009. We were the 3rd state in the United States, and we only won it through the courts, the Varnum case. And so the legislature at the time tried to take it away multiple times. It didn't take. That was also back when we were a little bit more of a purple state. So this is just sort of the redux. You know, as we've talked about at the beginning of this episode, they've been coming from the edges, right? They've been going after the culture, the book bans, and everything like that. The extremists are just going to strike at the heart.
Mm-hmm.
No more gay people, right? So he's definitely one of those. Also, he's obviously an anti-abortion guy since he owns the fake clinics, and he once told abortion opponents that if they wanted to prevent abortion, they could just not have sex.
I mean, doesn't that say it all? Doesn't that say it all? Just stop.
Abstinence kits.
Abstinence only always works, right?
So, okay, but tell me about if there are other far-right challenges, because as much as we think Reynolds is going to the far right, of course, there are even more far-right folks that think that she is too centrist. Who are those folks?
Look to the right. You'll always find someone to surprise you. Yeah, I think this is the broader story of Sherman's run. That I don't know if you remember the Hegseth. Take us back a little bit to the Hegseth hearings in Congress. There was a sense initially, right, that this confirmation wasn't going to hold up under Senate scrutiny.
Yeah, because Joni Ernst didn't like him.
Folks like Iowa Senator Joni Ernst came out fists in the air, ready to put up a fight about it. I mean, it was only through the intervention of right-wing luminary Charlie Kirk and some other far right activists who stuck their hand out and said, like, actually, this is our guy. Actually, you need to back down. This is the person. This is Trump's choice, and Trump won the election. Trump helped push you to help push your party to the to the largest margins. And we're going to go with this guy.
Right.
I think during that conversation, there was a lot made about, well, we need to primary Joni Ernst. Folks like, was it Christy Lake? Carrie Lake? It was Carrie
Lake.
Folks like Carrie Lake emerged as potentially moving to Iowa. There was this like kind of rumor about her moving
back to Iowa. Yeah.
Primary Joni Ernst. Like super interesting. Phenomena, and I think this is just what you're seeing. Outside of the Hegseth instance, there's also David Pouch is a conservative who has been primarying U.S. Representative Marionette Miller Meeks over in Iowa's 1st Congressional District. For those keeping track, it's the southeastern quadrant of the state. It includes places like Davenport, Iowa City, Muscatine, even Indianola, and it's and Miller Meeks during the primary, David Pouch really gave her a run for her money. This has been this kind of like the primary from the far right has always been a issue for Miller Meeks. Back when she was back, I'm trying to remember the year, but back in prior to COVID, there was his name was Representative Bobby. Not Kaufman. Bobby Schilling. There was former Representative Bobby Schilling. He was actually an Illinois representative for a while. But he came across. Carpetbagger Bobby came across the river and was going to primary Miller Meeks for her for the spot. And what was so interesting, he passed away, I think, a year after losing the primary, but had like a really compelling argument about how she's not conservative enough. One that led to pretty high margins for his bid. This was a pretty close primary, and it only got closer when David Pouch ran the following year. In addition to these kind of like bigger races for Congress, there was also this kind of dynamic in the District 35 special election we saw in January. Democrat Mike Zimmer eventually won the spot, but his Republican challenger Kate Whittington from Clinton. Kate was kind of a figure of the far right, big MAGA credentials. She was considered by many, too far to the right. She was coordinating. She had the
Steve King thing.
Yeah, there was that Steve King party that she was planning to throw in the district that, as I understand, Republican organizers shut down. Right, that this was not this was not a part of the party that they're looking to court. And they did not throw their money behind Kate. They did not throw their kind of organizational power behind. The Iowa Standard wrote quite a bit about this in a letter, kind of kvetching about this issue of the institutional party not supporting its grassroots, folks like Kate Whittington. And yeah, I think this is the kind of dynamic as Republicans cling to more and more power in the state. You're beginning to see some fault lines emerge that making it difficult to govern.
They'll make it difficult for primaries. Whether it's enough to unseat Reynolds, because these far right contenders, even though they do give maybe a few runs for their money, they don't have the institutional backing that Reynolds does. Reynolds has all the donors, really.
All the donors. Not just all the donors. Look at all the money. I mean, Reynolds is a household name. Love her, hate her. She's been at this for a long time, ever since Terry Branstad pulled her out of obscurity. I mean, she has been in power for a very long, long time, and she's got a ton of money. Where I think Sherman has like a couple of $1,000s to his campaign's name. Reynolds got a couple of million, right? We're talking about a universe of difference. And it's true. We are a long way from 2026. Sherman has plenty of time to begin improving his name recognition, improving his money game. But that's a hike up the uphill for him.
So he's kind of running on his old record. Doesn't have the party's backing because they're going to, of course, back Reynolds. Doesn't have the money. I don't know.
Yeah, but he's got that pro-life bona fides that he can sell to certain crowds. I mean, so which isn't insignificant, right? It's
Yeah.
an important feature, as we'll talk about in our interview for this episode. As we're gearing up for the long road to 2026, I thought it'd be interesting to look across the state lines at efforts to organize in rural states like Iowa. What works? That's the question. For our cornhole matchup, I speak to Jess Piper. She's the executive director of Blue Missouri, the host of Dirt Road Democrat podcast. She's a former high school teacher and a former Democratic congressional candidate. She's got some thoughts on why Democrats are having trouble in places like Iowa and what they can do about that. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. Hello, Jess.
Hey, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I was reading I was kind of reading around the internet, looking into your background, and I understand that part of your origin story is tied up to a 2018 abortion legislation, kind of a restriction that was placed on reproductive rights over in Missouri. Tell me what was happening on the other side of the state line.
Well, I mean, we had completely banned abortion in 2018, supposedly with, some carve outs and exemptions for women with health problems, but it didn't ever work out. But what specifically pushed me is seeing my local paper, the Maryville Forum. They provide space for all of my elected representatives who are all Republicans, right? So I look at my state representative at the time. His name was Alan Andrews, and he wrote this article about being so incredibly proud to sign this legislation banning abortion, even for women and children who had experienced rape and incest. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, that's too far for me, right? That's too much.
That's my line.
Yeah, and I decided to do something about it. And it started off, just by writing letters, writing him, all that sort of thing. And it culminated in me running for his position.
Did you come from a political family? Did you
No.
come from a political background? Like, what's your connection there?
No, I don't even remember my parents voting, right? So it happened after I went to college, and I sort of had this unraveling from the evangelical background that I had been born and raised in, a Southern Baptist. And from there, I got my education degree, then I got my master's degree, and I was just reading too much. You know how that works. So I read
Really dangerous pastime.
There's a reason they don't want people educated. So I started reading and realized that I really should be, focused on what is going on in my state. That was the first thing. Realizing that paying attention to federal politics really didn't impact me the way that state politics do, and really focusing and honing in on that, and then seeing what was happening. And, I had been a teacher for a long time, and I realized I was spending my own money in my, classroom. I realized as the teacher with 16 years experience and a master's degree, I was bringing home $2,300 a month to live on. And I just decided things weren't right and I needed to say something.
And I'm always, and this will come up in the conversation a little bit later, but I'm always kind of interested in the barriers to people running, right? One of your, we'll get to kind of your thinking on no uncontested elections. But I wanted to hear you as someone who went from 0 to 60 in a congressional run. What were some early challenges that you found as you're trying to get off the ground?
Yeah, so I actually ran for State House, HD1, so House
Okay.
District 1. But the barriers are there is no funding for someone like me. I'm in a very rural space. My district takes up 4 counties, where districts in Kansas City are, several neighborhoods. So I had this big space. We hadn't elected a Democrat in 30 years. We have never elected a woman. So I knew what my challenges were,
Right.
but I was going to do it anyway. And so I kind of had a little bit of a social media presence, and then I just started hammering away. And people are always like, oh, the hot takes, whatever. And I'm like, I'm just giving you facts from what's going on in my state. Not a hot take.
There's nothing hotter than a fact, I'll tell you.
I know. So the money started rolling in, and that's when the attention shifted, because they're like, how is this woman who has no reason to be running in the first place? How'd she raise $275,000 for a race in the middle of nowhere, right? And so after all that happened, it was sort of looked at like, what is going on? I still got my butt kicked.
But I know that it's going to take a long time. One race isn't going to change the minds of people.
And I think that's a challenge, right? Because we only, barring special elections, we don't do races but once a year. For elected office, it can be as long as 2-4 years before reconsideration on the ballot. And that long work, I think, is really challenging. But I think maybe connects to some of the thinking you've been doing on where Democrats can meet voters outside of suburbs, outside of urban areas. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from voters in that election, and maybe take us forward a little bit.
There were some really shocking things that happened to me. First of all, I realized that people thought they had never met a Democrat before. And I'm like, there's one that lives 2 doors down from you, actually. Um, I know. So Democrats didn't even know other Democrats and they thought they were alone. But obviously, mathematically, I can't win in a district like this if I'm not talking to Republicans. So I was knocking doors to people who had never had their door knocked ever, who had never received a phone call, who had never had a politician ask for their vote. So that was something new. But the biggest thing I took away from this was knocking doors and people agreeing with me on schools, roads, hospitals, all the things. And then finding out I was a Democrat and saying, I'm so sorry, but I'm a Christian and I can't vote for you. And the first time I heard it, I was blown away. And then by the 12th or 15th time, I'm like, okay, I get it.
What do you? I mean, I imagine you're. What do you say to that nowadays, right? When someone says, I mean, I come from a Christian background, Episcopalian.
Same.
It sounds like you deconstructed evangelical.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? What do you make of that now? What do you say to that now?
Well, it's indoctrination, and I know because I was indoctrinated very well. But I also just remind them that they are using a wedge issue. It's always one issue, right? It's always abortion, always. And so if I knock on the door of a woman who's in her 80s and says this thing, I'm just like, ma'am, they want to take away your Social Security. We don't have shoulders on our roads. You meet a combine, you're in a lot of trouble. They've defunded our schools to 4 days a week, like just trying to bring up the things that really matter. They're closing rural hospitals. If your husband gets sick, you've got to drive 2 hours to Kansas City. And just reminding them that some people will use your religion against you. They'll beat you over the head with it. Meanwhile, they're picking your pocket.
I'm interested in not just kind of the conversations you were having and voters, but like what conversations were you having with Democrats at the time, some more establishment-minded folks in the party?
Well, there can be a little bit of jealousy that happens. Like with me, I had no idea what I was walking into. I've never run for office. I was a teacher, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I just did the best I could. And so by the end of my campaign, they were writing articles about me in the St. Louis Post saying she's raised this much money. She should give it to people who could actually win their race. She should send this money to the Missouri House Victory Fund. She should, send her money out. And I'm like, friends, this isn't a net zero game. If you want to raise money, you can do that too. Like I was able to do it, you can too. And by the way, I can't just send my donor money to the House Victory Committee because if those donors wanted to send it there, they would have. They sent it to me to try to win a race or to try to make a statement.
Last November in Iowa, Democrats' results were not what they hoped for. In a big way, the suburbs that Democrats kind of thought were were really competitive, they just did not see the same sort of they didn't see any of the flips that they were hoping for, right? Other than maybe one or two. And, if Democrats aren't performing well in suburbs in Iowa, right, I think that speaks to, in general, a real challenge for the future of the party. I was interested to hear kind of your attention towards rural voters, your attention towards rural districts, and right, this notion that like, yes, we need to be going for the suburbs, but we also need to be making a case for us doing better in rural Iowa.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about the thinking there. Why is that an important kind of place to begin building some capacity?
Well, the first thing they could do is the National Democrats to look at rural spaces as the lowest hanging fruit. There was a study by the Brookings Institute that said that if only 3% more rural people turned out and voted for Democrats, it would completely change everything at the national level. That's presidential material. But also the fact that it's counterintuitive because people want to donate to flippable races. They want to donate to people who they think are really close. But the message is, Everybody should have a choice. And you build a bench when you give money to people that you know are going to lose. Like someone like me, I was able to turn out 25% of the vote. 25% of the people in my very rural space voted for someone who talked about abortion, LGBT rights, the fact that college should be free and preschool should be free and everyone should have health care. 25%. That's 1 in 4. I go to Hy-Vee and I'm like 1 in 4, right? I mean, it feels like a gut punch, but those people turned out to vote for me, and then they also went all the way to the top of the ticket. So by providing people with choices at the bottom of the ticket, you're not only helping the top of the ticket, but you're also bench building, because I was knocking doors. I was talking to people who said, I can't vote for you because I'm a Christian, right? But the next 2 years when I vote for them, they're like, man, we still don't have shoulders on our roads. We still have 4-day school weeks. This time, I think I'm going to vote for you. And when we knock doors, when all the chaos is happening at the national level right now, people who voted for Trump are likely willing to make a change, especially these farmers who are just getting smashed over the head, with Trump policies. So usually I stay away from talking about national issues. Not now. I will talk about those national issues right now.
I was reading that over 40% of legislative seats were uncontested in 2022. That number has dropped to just 18 in 2024.
Yeah.
Tell me about that push, and then I want to get us arc us forward into why that's such a shocking statistic.
Yeah. So when I ran, 40% were uncontested. And then we just talked about it. Everyone with blue Missouri. But then I think the message got out to everybody, and they're like, oh, crap, we can't win if we're not even contesting these races. And so the Democratic Party in Missouri did a good job. Our co-chair, Yvonne Chong Reeves, was really able to go out and to recruit people and say, we know this is going to be difficult. We know that you're probably not going to be able to flip this, but we need to give people a choice, right? And so that's what we did. And the bad thing is we didn't see any, races flipped. It was much like Iowa. We kept what we had. However, we were able to pass things like, the abortion. We had an abortion ban, and we were able to overturn it because we turned out enough people to vote for that amendment. And so even if people in the Boot Hill didn't change, didn't flip, they still got them out to vote for that.
I think it's a super interesting thesis, but one that if I'm a small dollar contributor to progressive political work in this state, I want to flip seats, right? I want to push people past a post, right? That's when I'm thinking about where I'm spending my time, where I'm spending my treasure. That's what I want as an outcome. Make the case for me. Why is competing so important? Why is that thesis so important to you?
Well, you have to think about how the Republicans got to where they are today. How did they capture SCOTUS? Well, they started way back in the 80s. Well, actually in the 70s, by providing abortion as a wedge issue. They worked for decades to get where they got. Meanwhile, Democrats are focused on 2 years. We don't have this plan. We're like, we want to flip a seat now. And instead of saying, you know what, you'll go from 25% this year to 30% in the next 2 years to 35 to 40. It's, it's a long game. And I'm telling you, Democrats for a long time have refused to play that game. And that got us to where we are right now. And I'll tell you another thing. And this goes for Iowa too. If we just pay attention like we have in Missouri to flippable races, and we only give to flippable races, look at the result. We do not have one Democrat elected statewide. You guys have one. We have 0 elected statewide. And that's why. It's because we focused on flippable races, because we weren't willing to give to people who are trying to build a bench, and, we're not playing the long game. And it's blown up in our face.
The strategy thus far isn't working, right, for rural states. And if that's true, if we believe that that's true, I think there's like a conversation that has to happen on the grassroots level about with potential candidates about why they should run for office, why they need to take this time, why they should subject themselves to the social media comment sections, the why they should subject themselves to the challenge of learning how to shoestring a campaign. Why do local people that agree with us, right, that things just aren't right in this country? Why do they need to? What is it that they need to be convinced of in order to run?
It's really hard to run in a rural space like mine. I lost friends. I lost my job. I was a teacher and I had to quit being a teacher because you can't run for office in Missouri and also be a teacher.
Is that
But then
right?
it is true.
That's a
And I
crazy
think we're
law.
one of, I don't know if it's 7 states, but there are a few states. So I had to step away, but then I should be able to come back, right? No, I live in a tiny town of 480 people. I talked about abortion and gay folks. How am I going to get a job anywhere? People are going to say, I don't want my kid in her class, right? So
Right.
I lost my career. So you are asking a whole lot of people, and people will often say, oh, so-and-so owns a business. They will go out of business, right? Because in my case, 75% of the people aren't going to stop and shop there. So we have to be really mindful of what we're asking people to do. And then when they stick their neck out, we need to be behind them. We need to be funding them, knowing they are likely not going to win in one cycle. It's a long game, and we are asking so much of people, so we have to support them.
I'm hearing you say that we need to put institutional support. We need to put grassroots support around folks that decide to raise their hand. What else? What else do we need in order to help candidates get to that go no go point? What else do we need to be doing?
So I raised a bunch of money, right? I raised more than any state candidate in the entire state, in the middle of nowhere. I still didn't win. What I really needed, and I wouldn't have won in one cycle anyway, but what I needed was people helping me knock doors, people helping me make calls. I had all this money, and I was able to hire a lot of folks, but you really need the support of your community coming out and doing those things for you. And it's hard in places like mine because we haven't elected a Democrat in 3 decades, right? The institutional part is kind of crumbling. I will say that Iowa, because I speak in Iowa all the time, Iowa has much more institutional county level clubs and that sort of thing that haven't been broken up over the years. And I would say it has a lot to do with, you guys having the caucus and all the things. Missouri's is kind of crumbled, and we're slowly trying to build it back. But again, it goes to state parties looking at places like mine and saying, it's too red, we're not giving you any money. But then it happens at the national level too, because the DNC looks at Missouri and Iowa and says, you're too red, we're not sending you any money. And the problem is they raised $1 billion with the Kamala Harris campaign. And that money, if even a slight fraction of that sent out to the states and
Can
to
you imagine?
local institutions and clubs, would have made a massive difference. And that's what we need to think about too.
The reason I was excited to speak to you is you're doing a lot of grassroots organizing, a lot of kind of coalition building in a different state, right? But a state that I think is working with the same trends that that my state is, that Iowa is. And I wonder, from your vantage point, if you're trying to encourage work in particular spaces among particular institutions, right? Whether it's, I use Zach, what people really need to do is they need to get with their county party and they really just need to start, organizing for some greater power there. Is it, we need to take over the Elks Lodge in order to buy a tap at your local watering hole. What do you in your mind, like what works? What would be a good, if someone wanted to take a first step? What would that look like?
It's so with my county club, we decided that people, like I said, when I knocked doors, people said that they didn't know who Democrats were, right? And so I would think that we need to be doing things like getting together with our T-shirts and saying, hey, come to this meeting. We're going to teach you how to, whatever it is, change your oil. We're
Right.
going to teach you how to can. We're going to do all these things for the community. Also, we do food drives and we do coat drives. It's being back in the community and being recognized as not some baby blood drinking people who love abortions and we all have 10 of them, whatever
whatever the thinking is. And you know that when I knock on doors, I can hear Fox News blaring in the background. I know what's going on in their head because my entire family, right, voted for Trump. I know. I speak to these people daily. But it's being back inside our communities and saying, we're here. We're not evil. We're your neighbors. And all we're trying to do is help our community by making sure our roads are paved. I live in a town. I don't have paved roads. They're chip and seal, right? You can't scrape the snow off of it. And we don't have shoulders. And again, our schools are 4 days a week and our hospitals are closing. And it has nothing to do with Trump or Biden. It has everything to do with what's going on in Jeff City. And my representative is a very nice man. Very nice. He will vote every day of the week to force a child to give birth. He will vote every day of the week for school choice to close and defund public schools. And so it's coming back into our community and reminding our community, Trump is causing chaos, but what's really causing the pain in your life is your state legislature.
Jess Piper is the executive director of Blue Missouri and is the host of the Dirt Road Democrat podcast. Jess Piper, thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate you. This was fun.
So, Amie, you've heard about Jess before this interview, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's a viral personality on Twitter for sure. She's definitely able to really encapsulate these big ideas into very, Twitter friendly, which is to say short text post ways and get that to a larger audience. So that it's really a model that I think a lot of Democrats should be emulating.
Yeah, I mean, I think the messaging is a tremendous part, but getting that messaging out, building audiences around the work you're doing is tremendously important. And people that you either do it or you lose. That's the long of it.
Yeah, so that we got to figure out how to do that. So we have more than 4 listeners on our podcast too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's me,
Yeah.
it's you.
I listen to
don't
most
even know
of
that
it.
you listen to it. My mom and dad are, in fact, subscribers. I saw their emails. Sign up to the Substack.
What's up,
I was
Zachary's
like,
mom and dad?
Hey. Yeah, what's up, Zachary's mom and dad? And then there's our hater. What's his face? The guy who's on the dartboard in the office. What's you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, the guy who we'll let listeners guess
Who our hater is.
who the guy who the
We know.
face
We know
is
who
that
our
we have
hater
on a
is.
dartboard. But we love you, baby. Hey,
We love our haters.
we love you.
We do it for
We
you.
do this for you. It's all for you, Damien. That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop. Special thanks to our listener, Dirk, for recommending we speak with Jess Piper. If there's a voice out there that we can amplify, someone you want to hear from, shoot me an email at zach@iowastartingline.com. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is produced by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
And I'm Amie Rivers.
Thanks for listening. Cornhole Champions, press the button.
Press the button.
Cornhole Champions, press the button, you fools.
Don't forget to turn your audio equipment on.
Cornhole
How's the-
Champions, a podcast brought to you by Buttons.
You want it right here? That's a good spot.
Podcast brought to you by the button industry, by the Muscatine Pro button industry, a cottage industry that doomed a generation of wage workers. Welcome to Muscatine. Come for the sights of the Mississippi, the beautiful bluffs of the river, and learn about how we enslaved children to produce lots and lots of buttons. It's a whole thing.
But in 1911, there was a strike. I think a woman started it, if I'm not mistaken.
Women, am I right?
Women always starting shit.
Always starting strikes.
They tried to unionize in 1897 and 1903 and then 1910, which is when there started to be a lot of big strikes.